smiled when she said she'd been disgusted with me since day one. That's what haunts me most. Not her words, but my smile. 3 years of silence now. The lighthouse beam sweeps across my kitchen table set for ghosts. Evangeline's voice still echoes here, precise as winter air cutting through pretense we'd all maintained too long. I raised that boy from scraped knees to wedding bells, watched him choose a woman who saw me as something to endure. I baked her favorite pie, learned her coffee preference, bit my tongue when she redirected every conversation about family history. The betrayal wasn't her disgust. It was my desperation to be loved by someone who'd already decided I was worthless. My name is Cordelia Blackwood, 74 years old this December. I've lived in this house for 47 years, raised my son Atticus within these walls, buried my husband from this front porch. The lighthouse down the road has been my companion longer than any person. I never imagined I'd spend my golden years counting the days since my family disappeared. 3 years ago, I still believed in second chances, third chances, fourth chances. I believed love could bridge any gap if you just tried hard enough. I believed family meant something more than blood and obligation. The morning of that last Thanksgiving, I woke before dawn, the way I always did on holidays. My grandmother's china needed washing. The silver needed polishing. Every detail mattered when you were trying to save something that was already broken. Atticus had been pulling away since his father's funeral 2 years earlier. Grief does different things to different people. Some people lean into family. Others run from anything that reminds them of loss. My son chose running. But Evangeline, she'd been pulling away since the day I met her. I remember their wedding day. She was beautiful in that sharp, untouchable way, like looking at a photograph of someone you'd never meet. When I tried to help her with her dress, she smiled and said her sister had it handled. When I offered to share my grandmother's wedding ring tradition, she smiled and said she preferred modern customs. Always smiling, always polite, always creating distance with kindness. The twins changed everything. Scout and Harper, born when I was 68. I thought grandchildren would be my bridge back to my son. I thought they'd need stories only I could tell. I thought wrong. Evangeline controlled access to those children like a fortress guards its walls. Phone calls had to be scheduled. Visits required advance notice. Spontaneous grandmother moments didn't exist in her world. But I adapted. I became the kind of grandmother who asked permission, who waited for invitations, who swallowed her disappointment when plans got canceled. The morning of that final Thanksgiving, I set the table with deliberate hope. My grandmother's china, brought from Ireland in 1923. The pattern was faded now, hairline cracks running through the roses. But it was beautiful. It was history. It was love made tangible. I made my husband's stuffing recipe, the one his mother taught me 45 years ago. Sage from my garden, bread I'd baked the day before. My hands remember the motions even when my heart doubts the purpose. At 11:30, I heard car tires on gravel. My pulse quickened the way it always did. Hope is a stubborn thing. It survives on crumbs and still believes in feasts. Atticus emerged first. My boy, 48 years old and still beautiful to me. His hair had gone silver at the temples. His shoulders carried weight I couldn't name. When he hugged me, I felt him already leaving. The twins tumbled out next. Scout with her wild curls and grass-stained knees. Harper with his serious eyes and careful questions. 8 years old and full of secrets I'd never learn. Evangeline came last. She moved with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. Her coat was cream-colored wool. Her boots were spotless. She looked like she was attending a funeral. She kissed my cheek. The same polite kiss she'd given me for 15 years. Cool and careful and meaningless. We gathered around the table. The twins chattered about school, about friends, about a cat they'd found behind their garage. Normal conversation, safe conversation. The kind that fills space without revealing anything. I watched Evangeline throughout the meal. She ate small bites. She smiled at appropriate moments. She kept her phone face down beside her plate. But something was different. The careful control had cracks in it. When Harper asked about his grandfather's lighthouse days, I saw my chance. I began telling the story of the great storm of 1987. How his grandfather stayed at his post for 36 hours. How he guided 12 ships to safety. The twins listened with wide eyes. Even Atticus smiled. For a moment, we were family again. But Evangeline's fork clinked against her plate. Once, twice, 3 times. I kept talking about tradition, about heritage, about the importance of knowing where you come from. The clinking stopped. The silence that followed felt different, heavier, final. Evangeline set down her fork. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked directly at me for the first time all day. The words came like winter breaking through windows. I can't do this anymore. Evangeline's voice cut through my story about the lighthouse, through the twins' laughter, through 15 years of careful politeness. Her hands trembled against the tablecloth. My grandmother's roses seemed to wilt beneath her fingers. The room went silent. Even the twins stopped chattering. Children know when adults are about to break something that can't be fixed. Atticus reached for his wife's hand. She pulled away. Evangeline! His voice carried warning, pleading, fear. She looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time since their wedding day, I saw her without the mask. What I saw there made my blood turn cold. Hatred, pure and simple and 15 years in the making. I've been disgusted with you since day one. The words hung in the air like smoke, like poison, like truth finally set free. Harper's fork clattered to his plate. Scout's eyes filled with tears she didn't understand. My son's face went white as the November sky outside. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break. Crack. Like ice under pressure. Like my grandmother's china when it hits the floor. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't defend myself. I smiled. The smile came from somewhere deep. Somewhere I didn't know existed. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't forgiveness. It was recognition. The terrible relief of finally seeing the truth. Evangeline, stop! Atticus's voice shook. The children are here. She turned to him. The fury in her eyes could have melted steel. The children need to know what kind of woman their grandmother really is. My smile widened. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't control it. It felt like falling off a cliff and discovering you could fly. What kind of woman am I, Evangeline? The question surprised us both. I hadn't meant to ask it. But now that it was out there, I needed to know. After 15 years of walking on eggshells, of swallowing my words, of making myself smaller and smaller until I nearly disappeared, I needed to hear her truth. She leaned forward. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The kind who pretends to be loving, but really just wants to control everything. The kind who guilt-trips her son for having his own life. The kind who thinks being a grandmother gives her the right to interfere in our marriage. Each word was a blade, precise, surgical, designed to cut deep. The kind who makes my children feel guilty for not loving you enough. The kind who turns every conversation into a history lesson about people they'll never meet. The kind who treats my house like a museum for your dead husband's memory. Atticus stood up. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "That's enough." But Evangeline wasn't finished. 15 years of swallowed resentment poured out like floodwater. "She calls when we're having dinner. She shows up uninvited. She criticizes how I raise my children. She makes everything about her pain, her loneliness, her need to feel important." The twins sat frozen. Scout's tears fell silently into her mashed potatoes. Harper stared at his lap. My grandbabies, caught in the crossfire of adult hatred. I reached across the table. My hand found Scout's. She didn't pull away. That small mercy nearly broke me. "You're right," I said. The words surprised everyone, even me. "You're absolutely right." Evangeline blinked. She'd been prepared for denial, for tears, for me to play the victim. She wasn't prepared for agreement. "I have been desperate. I have been clingy. I have tried to control things that weren't mine to control." My voice stayed steady, calm, like the eye of a hurricane. "I lost my husband. I was losing my son. I was terrified of losing everything that mattered, so I held on too tight. I made my love a burden instead of a gift." Atticus sank back into his chair. His face crumpled. "Mom, don't." But I wasn't finished. If we were telling the truth, all of it needed to come out. "I knew you didn't like me, Evangeline. I knew from the very beginning. But I thought if I just tried harder, if I just loved you more, you'd eventually see that I wasn't your enemy." I looked at my son, my beautiful, broken boy. "I thought if I just held on long enough, you'd remember that you used to love me too." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, the lighthouse beam swept across the harbor. Light, darkness, light, darkness. The rhythm of truth revealing itself. Evangeline's anger collapsed. She looked younger suddenly, vulnerable. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted my family to be mine." "They are yours," I said. "They always have been." She shook her head. "Not with you in every conversation. Not with your history in every corner. Not with your sadness filling every room." The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. I had been filling rooms with sadness. I had been drowning them all in my need to matter. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "But apologies can't fix 15 years of resentment. Can't undo the damage of desperate love. Can't make someone care about you when they've already decided you're worthless." Evangeline stood up. She gathered the twins' coats with shaking hands. "We need to go." And in that moment I understood. This wasn't an argument. It was a goodbye. The silence that followed was deafening. Evangeline moved through my dining room like she was underwater. Slow, deliberate, each motion careful and final. She helped Harper into his coat, zipped Scout's jacket with trembling fingers. Her face had gone pale as November frost. The twins looked between us, confusion painted across their small faces. Scout's lip quivered. Harper clutched his grandmother's hand tighter. "Are we going home now?" Scout whispered. Evangeline nodded. She couldn't speak. The words she'd held inside for 15 years had emptied her out, left her hollow. Atticus stood frozen by his chair. My son, caught between the woman who raised him and the woman who chose him. His hands opened and closed at his sides, helpless, lost. "I should say something," he whispered. But what could he say? What words could bridge 15 years of buried resentment? What apology could fix the damage we'd all done to each other? I watched my family prepare to leave, perhaps forever. The realization hit me like cold water. This wasn't just an argument. This was an ending. "Take the leftover turkey," I said. The words surprised everyone, including me. Evangeline looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, raw. "What?" "The turkey and the stuffing. The children should eat." Such a small thing, such a normal thing, but normal felt impossible now. She stared at me, like I was speaking a foreign language, like kindness was something she'd forgotten how to recognize. "I don't want your food, Cordelia." The words hit me like a slap, but I understood them. Taking my food would mean accepting something from me, and she was done accepting anything from me. "Mom, please." Atticus's voice cracked. "Just take it." But Evangeline shook her head. She was done pretending, done being polite, done pretending we were family. Harper tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, are you sad?" I looked down at my grandson, 8 years old and already learning that adults break things, that love isn't always enough, that families can shatter over dinner tables. "A little," I said. "Me too." Scout pressed against my side, her small body warm against mine. "I love you, Grandma." The words nearly broke me, but I held myself together. These children didn't need to carry the weight of adult failures. "I love you too, sweetheart." Evangeline's jaw tightened. Even my relationship with her children felt like theft to her, like I was stealing something that belonged to her. "Say goodbye," she told the twins. Not good night, goodbye. The finality of it hit me like a physical blow. This was it. This was how it ended. Not with screaming or fighting, but with quiet resignation and children who didn't understand why their world was crumbling. Harper hugged my waist. Scout kissed my cheek. Their small hands patted my arms, comforting me the way children do when they sense adult pain. "We'll see you soon," Scout said. But we wouldn't. I knew it. Evangeline knew it. Even Atticus knew it, though he couldn't say it. "Maybe," I whispered. Evangeline took their hands, led them toward the door, away from me, away from this house that had become a battlefield. Atticus lingered. My son, my baby. My heart breaks walking on 2 legs. "I'm sorry," he said. But sorry couldn't fix this. Sorry couldn't undo 15 years of resentment. Sorry couldn't make his wife love me. I know. He wanted to say more. I could see it in his eyes. But words had caused enough damage for one day. "I love you, Mom. I love you too." He followed his family out. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Not a slam. Not anger. Just finality. I stood at the window, watched them pile into their car, watched Evangeline buckle the twins into their seats, watched Atticus start the engine. None of them looked back. The car pulled away, red tail lights disappearing down the gravel road. The sound of the engine faded. Then silence. Complete silence. I turned back to my dining room, the table still set for 5, food growing cold, my grandmother's china waiting to be cleared, evidence of a meal that had become a funeral. I began clearing plates, one by one, methodically, the same way I'd set them, the same way I'd done everything for 74 years, with hope that this time would be different. But this time hadn't been different. This time had been the end. I scraped untouched food into the garbage. Leftover turkey. Stuffing made from my husband's mother's recipe. Cranberry sauce from berries I'd picked myself. All of it going to waste. The twins' plates were clean. They'd eaten everything. Children always do. They find joy even in the middle of adult disasters. I washed each dish by hand, dried them carefully, put them back in the china cabinet where they belonged, where they'd stay until the next holiday that would never come. The kitchen felt different now, smaller, quieter, like it knew it would never hold family dinners again. I sat at my table, the same table where I'd fed my son breakfast before school, where I'd helped him with homework, where I'd held him when he cried over his first heartbreak, where I'd lost him forever. Outside, the lighthouse beam swept across the harbor. Light, darkness, light, darkness. The rhythm of truth revealing itself over and over again. I understood now why I'd smiled, not from cruelty, not from satisfaction, but from terrible relief. The pretending was over. The hoping was done. The desperate clinging to people who'd already left could finally stop. I sat in my empty house, surrounded by silence, surrounded by the echo of words that couldn't be taken back. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't have to wonder if they loved me. Now I knew. 3 years have passed since that last Thanksgiving. 3 years of silence. 3 years of empty chairs. 3 years of holidays celebrated alone with only the lighthouse for company. I fold the linen napkins one final time. Place them in the drawer where they'll stay until someone else needs them. My hands shake slightly. Age creeping in. Time running out. The phone hasn't rung. The mailbox stays empty except for bills and advertisements. Christmas cards from neighbors who don't know my family disappeared. Birthday cards I send that never get answered. I've become a ghost in my own life. But tonight, sitting in my kitchen with the lighthouse beam, painting shadows across the walls, I finally understand something I couldn't see before. Evangeline wasn't wrong. The truth tastes bitter, like medicine, like reality finally swallowed whole. I was desperate. I was clingy. I was drowning them all in my need to matter. My love had become a weight instead of a gift. My presence had become an obligation instead of a joy. She saw what I couldn't see, that I'd turned my grief into their burden, that I'd made my loneliness their responsibility, that I'd used my grandchildren as weapons in a war I was fighting with their mother. The woman who said she'd been disgusted with me since day one was braver than I'd ever been. She told the truth when I'd spent 15 years living a lie. I get up from my chair. My bones protest. Everything hurts more now. The cold, the silence, the weight of understanding. I walk to the window, press my palm against the glass. The lighthouse beam sweeps past. Light, darkness, light, darkness. The rhythm of truth revealing itself over and over again. I think about that smile, the one that haunts me, the one that changed everything. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't triumphant. It was recognition. The moment I finally saw myself clearly. The moment I understood that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's desperation wearing love's mask. I'd been so afraid of being forgotten that I'd made myself impossible to remember fondly. The realization doesn't make the silence easier, doesn't fill the empty rooms or quiet the echoes, but it makes it honest. And honest pain is easier to bear than the pain of pretending. I remember the twins' faces, Scout's tears, Harper's confusion, the way they looked between the adults who were supposed to protect them, but instead used them as shields. They're 11 now, growing up without their grandmother's stories, without my husband's lighthouse tales, without the history I'd been so desperate to pass down. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe they need to write their own stories, create their own traditions, build their own foundation without the weight of my grief crushing their shoulders. I think about Atticus, my son, my baby, my heartbreak walking on two legs. He chose his wife, his children, his future. The way he should have. The way I raised him to. I'm proud of him for choosing them, even if it meant choosing against me. The lighthouse beam sweeps past again. I count the seconds between light and darkness. The rhythm steady, predictable, comforting in its constancy. Some things endure. Some things keep going even when everything else falls apart. I am like that lighthouse now. Steady, constant, alone. But no longer desperate. I walk to my bedroom, pull out the box I've been avoiding for 3 years. Inside are photo albums, cards from the twins, drawings they made me, evidence of love that existed before I ruined it. I sit on my bed, open the first album. There's Scout at 3 years old, flower in her hair from helping me bake cookies, her smile bright as summer, her eyes full of trust. There's Harper at 5, serious and thoughtful, listening to his grandfather's stories about the great storms, absorbing every word like it was treasure. There's Atticus at their age, the same serious eyes, the same bright smile, the same trust I'd somehow broken along the way. I close the album, but I don't put it away. Instead, I hold it against my chest. Let myself remember when love was easy, when being a grandmother was joy instead of desperation. Those moments were real. They mattered. They existed before I twisted them into something else. I get up, walk to my desk, pull out paper and pen, begin writing. Dear Scout and Harper, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if your parents will let you. But I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. Not for loving you. Never for loving you. But for loving you wrong. For making my love a burden instead of a gift. For putting you in the middle of adult problems you shouldn't have had to carry. You are good children. Kind children. Smart children. You deserved better from me. I hope you're happy. I hope you're safe. I hope you know that somewhere in Maine, your grandmother thinks of you every day. Not with sadness now, with gratitude for the time we had, for the love that existed before I broke it. I seal the letter, address it, place it in my desk drawer, next to the others I've written but never sent. Maybe someday. Maybe when they're adults. Maybe when they can understand that love sometimes means letting go. I turn off the lights. The lighthouse beam sweeps across my darkened kitchen, across the empty table, across the life I've built and lost and learned to accept. Outside, the ocean moves against the rocks, constant, patient, wearing everything smooth in time. I close my eyes, listen to the rhythm, water and stone, light and darkness, holding on and letting go. For the first time in 3 years, I don't pray for them to come back. I pray for them to be happy. It's the first honest prayer I've made in years.